I think one of the most important things in society these days is the need to be understood. And I think this is because there is an unprecedented loneliness epidemic that is going on. People are more disconnected than ever, and people just want to be understood. And I think that's why videos online are so powerful. It's because when we find videos of someone we connect to, we form this kind of parasocial relationship with them. And we have the sense that someone understands us. And you can see that with all kinds of videos. You see them with, day in the life videos, or or videos where people just talk into the mic, unscripted, because we want someone who understands what we're going through. And even if they say it in the most plain terms, it just feels good when someone says those things out loud, when they put a voice to the thoughts. I also think there's a layer of romance to the whole idea of finding someone who gets you, because when you feel closed off, it's kind of like you're living in a movie, and it's really fun to be depressed and to kind of wallow in that self-pity. And when you live life like that, you can really see things through a tunnel vision, because when you're living through a vision, then everything around you just feels intangible. And when you try to find people who understand you, it's like you have the power to choose who enters into your life. And I think that's why we find a lot of people these days being so lonely, because when you're lonely, then there's a form of power in that. When you choose to be lonely, then you're choosing how you want your life to unfold. So there's this thing where people, they think the criteria for choosing people to enter into lives is something that makes them special. Because when you're selective, that means that you have taste. You have taste of the people you choose to interact with the people you deem to be worthy of your time. So being lonely gives you a justification to be so selective. Think about it. Imagine that people love you unconditionally. In an ideal world, people love you for who you are. And you'd think that that'd be pretty nice, right? When people seem to get along with you for no real reason, and they shower you with affection and praise. But I think that would be pretty miserable, because if people are always acting like that towards you, then there's no real connection. It's kind of like a paradox, because what we really want is to be interpreted correctly. And that's the thing, because people don't really talk about that. They talk about needing love, finding that ideal partner. But the thing is, it's a myth. This is why brief encounters can feel sometimes more intimate than long relationships. Because, the strangers that you meet on the train, and the people that you meet in foreign cities, someone who catches you in the wrong hour and says the right sentence. We need those moments of connection. And the thing is, I think society is being structured in a way as to make those moments of connection less common. And that's because people are more turned inward than ever before. And let's examine what's going on in society. People see our posts, our photos, our messages, our playlists, taste, work. People see everything on the outside. But when people see you, that's not the same as knowing you. And I think over time, people choose to mold themselves into a version of themselves that becomes easier to digest. And this takes away from the ability to find people who actually connect with you, because when you're performing like that, then you're kind of chipping a part of yourself away every single time you perform. But there's still this need to find real connection. So it's like two parts of yourself which are pulling on the same rope. And yeah, it really makes it hard to achieve self-actualization, the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think the need to be understood. I think self-love, or love in general, is like the third from the top of the pyramid. But to be understood truly, I think that is a very important thing that should be higher on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The need to be understood is fundamental to self-actualization, to becoming an individual at the highest level. And this is very important from childhood, because as a child, you need someone to mirror your own thoughts back on you, to provide the assurance that your thoughts have weight to them as a kid. Because if you act a certain way, if you project your ideas out into the world and nothing responds back to them in a way that's authentic, then you never really develop as a person. And a lot of people, I think they spend a lot of time in shallow relationships with friends or just acquaintances. And it's a tragedy because they don't find people who actually connect with them. And when your strongest beliefs aren't reinforced, when they're just kind of floating out there, then the idea of you isn't really anchored to anything, and it kind of just hangs there as a loose form. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's the way I like to imagine it. And that's why key relationships are so important. You know that trope in movies where strangers meet for the first time and they talk about something really hypothetical, maybe about themes from a book, or maybe a quote, or maybe just something really profound. Maybe they're analyzing something that they read or something that they saw. And despite the apparent surface talk, there's a deep connection. And I think the reason that that connection forms is because when you resonate with someone on something so simple without any prior history, then automatically you're going to connect to that person. And that's why we love the idea of liking people just based on that first interaction, because there aren't any consequences. You can say to yourself, I might never meet this person again, and I had a really nice conversation with them. So I think being free of this expectation in interactions with strangers can make them so liberating. And that's why maybe over time, as we get to know a person more, we start to put borders on our behavior. We start to box ourselves in because subconsciously we're acting in a way that becomes desirable to the other person. And we lose a part of ourselves that way. And, that can lead to things like losing a spark in a friendship. So on the idea of losing a part of yourself to a person, what I mean by that is being understood can feel comforting at first, but it becomes dangerous when another person's interpretation of you starts replacing your own sense of self. Someone might say, I know why you're like this. You're scared of intimacy, or you don't really want that. You're just trying to prove something. This is the real you. You're just denying it. I mean, at first this can feel intimate because they seem to see something hidden in you. And I guess maybe you get a rush of dopamine from that validation. But over time, their version of you becomes a cage. Basically, what I'm saying is that in our modern society, we have a deep rooted need to be understood, and seeing as authenticity is at an all-time low, then we naturally crave it more. And since it's easier to absorb the authenticity of other people, to feel understood, I think people are being lazy. Instead of creating their own images of themselves from within, they attach onto other people, because being the receiver of external validation is much easier than reinforcing your own internal structure. And as I said at the start of this video, that's why we turn so much inwards, because, it's hard to look outward sometimes, because the world is filled with normies who would rather build their identity from the way someone else perceives them than by becoming their own person. And they lean on the desire to be understood, or they say no one understands me, as a personal crutch for not really becoming their own person. All in all, what I'm trying to say is that people have a deep-rooted need to be understood. However, authenticity is at an all-time low in society. Demand is high for it. And the easiest way to achieve the feeling of authenticity is to receive external validation from someone who connects to us, who sees what we're going through, who makes us feel like we're not alone. And this is much easier than living with the security of your own identity, from climbing to the top of Maslow's hierarchy and becoming a self-actualized person. And that's why there will always be people who feel misunderstood, because it's easy. It might sound like I'm being critical of people who have the desire to be understood, but it's not really a critique. It's more of what I notice. And I myself feel that way sometimes, because I sometimes feel like I can't find people who understand what I'm trying to say. And that is a bad thing, because it can mean that you implode on yourself as a person. When you have nothing to hold you up, when you have no person who tries to reinforce you, then you'll just spiral. So I think that the important thing is finding someone who understands you, but is also willing to add to that understanding. Because if they just reflect everything that you give them, then you're not going to grow as a person. But when they refine that understanding, when they give it nuance, then that's how you develop. That's how you see things you never saw before. And that's how you get exposed to ideas that you never would have thought of. And that's ultimately the function of friendship, of relationships and acquaintances. And I think that might be the solution to finding stability in this world.